Games based on mythology have always been among some of my favorite games. Unfortunately, they aren't exactly the most common genre out there, so there isn't all that much to go on when you're looking for new games to play about it. Unfortunately, most games are just Greek-centered, which makes sense because Greek culture has a huge influence on Western culture, but sometimes we need that spice of life to take us beyond Percy Jackson and introduce us to a broader spectrum of visionary ventures. One game I've stumbled upon recently has done a fantastic job of representing multiple pantheons faithfully, and has great gameplay to boot, a game where you play as a wide array of deities and fight against other notable mythical figures. I'm of course talking about the newly released indie game Ancient Gods. If you're a fan of on-the-nose game titles, hero collectors like Raid Shadow Legends, the sponsor of this video, or deck-building roguelites like Slay the Spire, then this game will be an amazing add-on to your definitely healthy-sized game collection. Sadly, no, Raid Shadow Legends did not sponsor this video, but I feel like the second I do get a sponsor from them, that's a pretty good metric to see if I'm a successful YouTuber. Alright, let's start with probably the most obvious topic, the Ancient Gods. With a roster of 32 characters featuring several recognizable pantheons, there's already plenty of collecting to do, but there are also plans to add even more characters to the game later on, including entering new pantheons and updates or DLC. The 4 pantheons we do have within the game so far are to no one's surprise Greek, but also Egyptian, Norse, and Aztec. There are already plans to expand upon the existing groups, but also 2 confirmed future pantheons of Chinese and Mesopotamian. As far as the individual playable gods go, there are way too many to go over in one video, so I'm probably going to either make videos spotlighting the gods separately, or the pantheons as a whole later down the road. The collection system, while not being the most complicated thing in the world, has definitely been a fun extra bit of motivation to keep me playing, especially the fancy roll in the Discord server you get after collecting all the different gods. I'll be there one day. You know, it's not a huge deal, just slowly driving yourself insane wanting to get a slightly fancier purple looking name. While we're talking about the Discord server, it's an amazing place to give feedback and get insider information on the game from very active and responsive devs. It's been super fun to be a part of, and I'll leave a link to it in the description. Now, if there's one thing I like about my mythology games, it's the art style. I've always loved seeing how these ancient ideas are reimagined through a modern lens, and it's super cool to see how they get interpreted. Now, I was gonna say I loved the art in Smite, another legend-based video game, but I have a pretty split opinion on it. On the other hand, you get these bad
Taco
designs, like my boy Bakashura, or Chalk, but on the other hand, I'm not sure if I can safely put this on YouTube without getting taken down, so you get this work of art. Luckily, Ancient Gods art is all fantastic and probably one of my favorite things about the whole game. The vast majority of the art is made by one person, and it hugely impresses me how reliable they are to represent every god freshly and accurately. I'm already planning on making a separate video that will review the art of the game, so keep your eyes out for that one as well. Something that I love about mythological games and historical games as a whole is that sort of inspiration that they can give you to learn new things. It's always cool when a game can encourage learning without trying to be in your face or educational. Ancient Gods did this really well. The devs mentioned they like giving attention to lesser known gods, and I completely agree. As time goes on, they'll flesh out the roster, but big names you'd expect to be in the game, like Ra and Thor, aren't even in there yet, whilst lesser known gods that you probably haven't heard of are. Now, some people might see this as a weakness, but I honestly think it was a pretty good move, because you don't have to wait for a bunch of updates or DLC in order to get a wide variety and more dynamic character collecting. The example of this one I played was mostly the Aztec Pantheon. I like to consider myself a history enthusiast, but I'm definitely not an expert. I've always been intrigued by the Aztec mythos, but aside from a couple YouTube videos and, just the basics, I'm not a huge expert about it. So seeing some of those deities in the game kind of made me realize that, and it made me want to learn more about it, so I spend a little bit just brushing up, learning some more interesting stuff about the culture and the mythology as a whole. Alright, led me down this whole rabbit hole. Maybe that's just a me thing, but I find it fantastic when I can use games as a gateway drug to broaden my scope in life. Next up we have the music, another amazing part of the game that just makes the overall vibe go so much harder than they needed to, so mad respect on the creators for just going above and beyond again. The game doesn't have an enormous soundtrack, but despite a lot of hours, it still hasn't gotten repetitive unlike some other games I've played this year. At the time of writing this, there isn't a super accessible place to get the music, though the creators have mentioned they plan on posting them eventually. I'll try to get a couple of seconds of music in here, just so you can get a taste. Hopefully I have it as background music or something. Anyway, so moving past that, each area will usually get its own theme. Some sort of jungly Aztec area, deserty Egyptian area, all that kind of stuff. They all match the theme of their spots really well, and they go really hard, I'm not gonna lie. Here are some examples that I hopefully managed to get working. With the music section over, it's finally about time we got to the game part of this game, so let's actually dive into the main gameplay. Like I said in the intro to this video, the game is best described as a deck building roguelite with some added hero collecting features. Basically, Slay the Spire had a kid with Smite and Raid Shadow Legends. The game revolves around going between little events and duels to the death. Let's talk about the events first, because sadly this is one of the biggest weaknesses of the game. The events they have are fine, I don't have any problems with them. It's just the lack thereof that makes it a lot harder to praise. The game has only started its journey and plenty of updates are on the horizon, so I expect more events will trickle in with time. But first, let's cover a few of the main ones that are in the game so far. Of course, you have the staples of most games in the genre, like a gambler, a merchant, spots that offer high risk and high reward, but there are also a few more unique ones. My personal favorite is a fountain that lets you get the passives from other gods. Only the ones that you've collected, so this encourages even more collecting, which I enjoy, and it also adds to the diversity of the builds that you can make within the game. Now onto the combat. I'll avoid getting too in-depth because I don't want to make some dry tutorial, so I'll just give an overview. The core combat system is turn-based card playing. Each character has a main class that determines the starting deck, and two subclasses that determine other cards that you're allowed to add as you progress through your run. You'll usually be playing a variety of attacking cards to kill the opponent, and defensive cards to stop yourself from getting capped, the usual. There are also passives, buffs, and skills that you can use with cooldowns. All the cards and skills use a mana system similar to Slay the Spire, where it resets every turn and you can add or take away mana for each card you play. Each card will also have a combo type, so when you play lots of similar cards in a row, you can get different perks. Each class has a different playstyle. Pyromancers have burning cards that literally cover your opponents in copious amounts of napalm, or Peltastas, spamming guard, berserkers, using blood for fuel, etc. Each class has its own flavor, and it's really fun to mix and match classes to get unique builds. You can use the loot you earn in the game to buy skill books that let you switch around the classes for every character, so you can fine-tune it even more. Speaking of builds, each god has its own passive ability that lends well to certain things, but can also be used in a variety of unexpected ways to add more dynamic builds. As I mentioned earlier, you gain the passives from other gods in your run as perks, letting you mix and match abilities to maximize your god's power into really unique strategies. I have a crippling addiction to the Ares passive because it lets your guard persist through every turn, so you can just become basically untouchable. It's easily my favorite. On top of that, you can switch out the classes of each god, then select from a wide variety of cards to achieve plenty of playstyles that can keep you occupied for a long time because there's always something new to do with your cards. Moving away from combat, the game has two main modes, Campaign and Endless. The campaigns are a set of challenges centered around each pantheon that lets you earn rewards if you accomplish certain missions within that, and they'll have quicker payouts since they have an actual ending. Endless, on the other hand, is the main gameplay, where you traverse a map of zones bit by bit, until you get to the end where you can loop, which is basically just restarting the map, and you can start back facing stronger enemies and getting more rewards. However, if you die, you lose 60% of the loot, so quitting while you're ahead can be advantageous when you do reach the end of your loop. The game uses two main currencies, gold and diamonds. Gold is used to buy bulk shards for your gods, essentially pieces to upgrade them. Diamonds are used to try and unlock gods, having a chance to get the god card or higher amounts of shards. Diamonds can also be used to get the skill books, as mentioned earlier, so Endless is a good way to grind out a lot of loot to upgrade or unlock more characters as you play more and more. Upgrading gods with shards will boost all their overall stats, like the assortment of damage multipliers and resistances. Each god has a star level of 3 to 5, which determines its base strength. The lower the stars, however, the more they can be upgraded. So eventually all the gods you have will even out, meaning you can play as your favorite characters without being underpowered. Once your god is leveled up enough, it will unlock another ability, usually adding a unique card to your hand to further the diversity and power of the builds they're equipped to handle. So there you have it, the quick overview of Ancient Gods, one of my favorite indie games and honestly games in general to come out this year. If any of what I said intrigued you, I'd highly recommend you check it out on the Steam store. But before we go, it's time for the Taco Treatise. Now, as much as it hurts to say, I think my official but temporary stance on the game will be a 7 out of 10. But this is with a bit of an asterisk just because it's still early in its lifetime, and I'm sure the updates will bring up some of the areas that are a bit lacking. Overall though, I'd recommend this game to any Slay the Spire fans, hero collecting followers, or mythology devotees. I'd say the top 3 things I love about the game are the art style, class system, and just mythology theme as a whole. I'd say the 3 things I want to see improved in the future are the random events, more of them I mean, new classes, and more pantheons and gods. Luckily, all of these are planned on getting updated, so I'm super excited to see where the game goes, and I'll definitely stick with it for quite a while. I might end up making a video on its own about future stuff I want to see in the game, but for now I'm just going to say I'd love to see Khonsu, Serket, and Dionysus added to the game. If you have ideas, be sure to leave them in the comments below and on the game's official Discord server, once again linked in the description. If you enjoyed the video or want to see more of my content in general, be sure to rupture that subscribe button and cover that bell in napalm. This is a brand new channel, so every little bit helps, and I'm honestly grateful for anything you do. But no matter what you do, or if I ever see you again, remember that the person in the mirror is worth more than you think. Talk out. It's supposed to be a taco out pun. I'm honestly not sure if it makes any sense, just roll the outro.